Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Pooja and I hope you guys are doing good. If you're wondering why I am in such a happy mood today, it's because I have a new video for you people. A video jotting down 12 books that I feel you should read in 2023 that has the potential to change your thinking and essentially change your life in the process. Now, I already have a similar video on this, listing down 3 books that you can read this year to sort of change your life. If you only have time to read 3 books this year, you should read those books. I'm gonna link that video down in the description box if you want to check that out. Having said so, I feel if you have more time at your hand and if you want to read one book every month, or you want to diversify genres that you like reading and yet get something out of it, something out of the fun, I would advise these books to read in 2023. So hold tight, this is going to be a very long video because there are 12 books and you know me, I talk at length with books that I love. The list that I have created is a mix of fiction, non-fiction, philosophy, but essentially because I'm a fiction reader, I'm going to add a lot of these to the list, yet I feel they're very useful in changing your life. And I'm pretty sure once you read all or some of them, they have the potential to change the way you think and change how you look at life. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Otherwise, I'll just keep blabbering like this. First book on the list is one of my very favorite books, Shantaram by Gregory David Roberts. This book is about a convict, Lynn, who is the protagonist. He's the narrator of the book as well, who has escaped a prison in Australia, and he finds himself on the streets of Bombay and he wants to disappear there. Now this book is very special because I read it years ago and it's motivational in its own ways, because what the protagonist goes through is nothing short of extraordinary, and yet he tries to battle addiction, he tries to battle his own demons. It's a very long book, it's an epic, it spans like 1200 pages, and yet it's an experience, a immersive experience in itself. The grit of the protagonist and just that celebration of human spirit in surviving against all odds is what stuck with me, and I am so happy I read it back then. To quote a little something from the book, sometimes we love with nothing more than hope. Sometimes we cry with everything except tears. And such is the beauty of this book. You laugh, you cry, but at the end of it, you find yourself sticking and holding on to hope in life. The second book on the list is Bahut Dur Kitna Dur Hota Hai by Manav Kaul. This is a book in Hindi and written by actor cum screenplay writer cum theatre writer cum writer by Manav Kaul himself. When I read this book, I was not in touch with Hindi literature a lot, and I was craving for reading something in like just the language, the script, and I picked this one up. Why I love this book is it talks about traveling, and I am a bit of a traveler myself. I like creating my own stories whenever I am on the road or just finding a new place, and it has always been my dream to travel across Europe. And when I read the book, it talks about his experiences of traveling across smaller countryside places in France, or like say in Prague, all across Europe, but not the conventional places. He also mentions places where he walked the same street as some of very famous writers of that time walked, and that was kind of so motivating for me. Back then I was also started preparing for my for finding a job outside of India, and that was kind of a kick for me. I promised myself that when I do go to see Europe, I'm gonna take this book with me and track all the places that I mentioned there and try to stand in the same places. That has not happened till now, but I'm hopeful that's gonna change in the next few months, and when it does, I am going to feel like my life came a full circle. That is what this book is about. Second, it's also a very easy to read book, and if you want to pick up something in Hindi, this is going to help you not feel overwhelmed with just the complexities of the language, but also put you in mood for something that's very regional and reminds you of your childhood days. I'm going to quote something from the book, and this is going to be in Hindi, so I'm sorry for people who do not speak Hindi. कितनी दूर तक चले जाने पे बहुत दूर होता है. मैं बहुत दूर था खुद से, अपनों से, अपने छोटे छोटे बने हुए वस्त्र ढरों से, पर फिर भी पता था कि जरा सी दूरी पर यही पुराना सारा जिया हुआ आस लगाए खड़ा है. उसे बस एक छोटे कमजोर क्षण की जरूरत थी, और वह वापस धर दबोच के मुझे फिर किसी भी नए की उम्मीद निरर्थक होगी. एकदम नया और नए सिरे से जीना क्या संभव है. See, it just brought a smile on my face just reading this little paragraph. I am sure it's gonna change your life too. From fiction, let's move on to something fantasious or like dystopian. The third book on the list is 1984 by George Orwell. Now, George Orwell is a very famous author. A lot of people on this planet would know about him, if not everyone. And this book is also a very quoted, popular book, popular classic. It was written way before 1984, so you can imagine how, I think it was written in 1950s, imagining a world in future 1984 where things are drastically different from what we see. There is a government that oversees activities of every individual, and it's to a point that no one has free will, no one has freedom of speech, no one has anything of their own thoughts. And if by chance you do, what happens to you is described in the book. The protagonist is someone who finds himself torn between curbing his will and curbing his train of thoughts, and just craving that sense of freedom, independence, of not having to be under an eye all the time. And when I read it, it's a long book. When I read it, probably I was also struggling through things in my life, and I finished it on 31st of January as the sun was setting. I was in Gokarna, and as the book finishes, I was filled with so much gratitude of not having to live in a world like that. That was what I thought, and I became more grateful of the things around me. Even though I have less of something, even though all my desires are not fulfilled, I as a person appreciate and thrive on freedom of speech and just having that power to speak my mind, have an opinion, and live freely. So if that were to be my world, I can't imagine how I would survive. So that's why it just brought gratitude in my life. If you cannot read this long a book, there's another book by the same author, Animal Farm. It's a very small book. It still has the potential of changing your thinking, how capitalism works, and how you could just be a mule for things, which is sad, which hits your head a lot, but it is yet very important for changing your thought process. Let's hear something from the book just to end this conversation. Perhaps one did not want to be loved so much as to be understood. On that note, let's move on to the fourth book on the list. This is again sort of dystopian, not entirely dystopian, but the book that I'm talking about is Convenience Store Women by Sayaka Murata. This book is not dystopian, but it comes from a perspective of the protagonist being stuck in a loop, in a vicious cycle of working in a convenience store in South Korea, and she has not known life other than working there ever since she turned 18. That is when she started working in the store, and all her ideas kind of eventually just aligned with what the store wants of her. And it's so hard hitting in understanding that even we as humans, when we do not know how to have a solid work-life boundary, how easy it is to let your personality spill into your workspace and make that your entire identity. It becomes so problematic for her that she cannot fit in the normal society. Every thought that she has, every action that she takes is in line with what she thinks is expected of her as a convenience store woman. And it's hard for you to digest and see her struggling like so. But the truth of the matter is, I see people like this around me all the time who justify working extra or who justify adhering to that identity just because they think that is going to bring something. Your company is going to be always loyal to you, and that is what is asked for you. That's not really true. Your job is a job at the end of the day, and I personally would advise all around me to have a life outside it. It helps you not fall back into just a single source of identity, which can, looking at the climate today as well, which can affect your mental health so bad in the long run. So just read the book and you would understand what I'm trying to say. It's a small book, thin book, and get your hands on it. You wouldn't feel sorry. I'm going to read something from the book to help you understand what I'm talking about. The normal world has no room for exceptions and always quietly eliminates foreign objects. Anyone who is lacking is disposed of. So that's why I need to be cured. Unless I'm cured, normal people will expurgate me. Finally, I understood why my family had tried so hard to fix me. I hope you never come across a person like this, and I hope you never become that person. But for now, I just would recommend you to read this book. From fiction, let's move to some non-fiction books, because I know some people like reading non-fiction books. I've added these books to the list because I love them, even though I find it hard to read non-fiction time and again. But why I like them were because they were easy to read. Even as non-fiction, they did not feel like it's just a lecture or it's just like point-based something. It felt to me like a story is being told, and yet it was really eye-opening and I got something out of them. The fifth book that I'm talking about is Art Matters by Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman is a very famous author and he writes children books, fantasy books. In this essay, this is a very small book of around, I think I read it as an audiobook, so it was only 45 minutes. You can understand probably it's going to be 35 pages long book. And it's essentially an essay on what art means to the world and how it helps us imagine so many different things. It helps us open our minds to dragons and fairies and things that can fly, things that can be recorded. Everything in this world comes from just a thought, and we should not let that thought go. And I champion this book. I recommend this book to everyone who comes across and tells me that you should only read non-fiction, because art in this world is a savior in itself. It is an expression of the human spirit, and I also like to believe that we have survived so long because we have art on this planet. It could be painting, it could be other forms of art like sculpting, history, and reading, literature, books, just the art of cinema, plays, musicals. It's just a wide variety of things that you can expose yourself to, and it just heartens your heart, right? When you appreciate just the smaller details, put in the work, and you see something bloom so beautifully. I cannot express my feelings for art, but I would recommend this book. If you are short of time, or even if you are short of mental energy to read something, you can read such a small book and yet feel very fulfilled at the end of it. Neil Gaiman in this book says, "It is easy to pretend that nobody can change anything, that society is huge and the individual is less than nothing. But the truth is, individuals make the future, and they do it by imagining that things can be different. I'm going to leave you with this thought as we move on to the next book in the list. The sixth book in the list is another philosophy book. It is non-fiction by sense of it is a memoir or a biography of Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. I'm pretty sure it's a popular book. A lot of you guys would have already heard of it. Why you should read it is because it is author's account of his tryst and struggles while he was imprisoned in a concentration camp, and every day he saw so much suffering around him. Every day he saw people dying, people being put into gas chambers, starving to death, diseases. He was also separated from his family. He's alone, and even then he found a will to live. How did he do that is what he talks about, and he talks about the importance of having a purpose in life no matter what. That purpose could be as small as documenting your journey and waiting to get out and tell the world to motivate everyone. Even that thing is good enough to keep you going and survive and fight for survival. So this is a very, very motivating book. I had a copy. I gifted it to one of my close friends when they were moving, because I felt it would bring a change in their life. So I'm also giving the gift of a recommendation of this book to you guys so that you can read it too and get something out of it. Let's read a little something before moving on. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. I hope you guys pick up this book, and if you do, let me know in the description or anywhere else that you liked it as much as I did. While we are on the topic of war literature, another book, the seventh on the list that I'm going to recommend is All the Light That We Cannot See. This is also set in war-torn France, and it's from the perspective of the protagonist. She is blind and she can't see, and it's very motivating to read people finding beauty in this world even though they are short of some senses, and the perspective that it brings to your life, the gratefulness, how she struggles, she finds herself in situations that her life is in danger, the life of her family is in danger, and yet she's going across some landscapes to overcome those struggles and yet find beauty in this life. This is also a little bit of magical realism, but nevertheless it's a piece of exceptional fiction, one that you should not deprive yourself of. It's a bit of a thick book, 500 pages book, but it's an experience in itself, and the writing is amazing, the characters are amazing, and the lesson that you get out of it is all the more life-changing, I would say. This is by far my favorite quote from the book and favorite quote of all the time that I'm going to say now. Open your eyes and see what you can with them before they close forever. I don't want to say anything anymore. You be the judge. I hope you pick up this book and like it as much as I did. Having said that, let's move on to the eighth book in the list. This is again one of my personal favorites. You would find me recommending it over and over again to people who come to me for recommendation, because it's such a small book. A lot of people get very overwhelmed with longer books, and it is such an interesting story, fast paced, and it talks about the human spirit of survival as well as spirit of survival in all our beings, and the spirit of competitiveness. Yet in the end, nothing really matters. Even if you win or lose, all of us are just going to die. The book that I'm talking about is Old Men and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. It's a piece of classic literature. I have read it 3 times. I can read it as many times as is possible, and I would still enjoy it. This is a story about an old man who is going through a kind of a rough patch. He's a fisherman and he has not been able to catch a catch in like 82 days, and everyone thinks he's cursed. And one day, while being on his daily expedition to catch fish, he catches something really big, and in a moment of greed and trying to overcome that feeling of being cursed, he goes and try to relive his old glory of catching such a big fish. What ensues is a battle between the fish and the old man, and how we see the thoughts of the fish and the old man transitioning, and the battle spans a period of 3 days. In that period of time, he doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep, and in the end, what happens is for you to find. But I would definitely recommend, I would tell you, you wouldn't be disappointed if you pick up this one. To quote something from the book, every day is a new day. It is better to be lucky, but I would rather be exact. Then, when luck comes, you are ready. I hope you're ready to read this book. I am sure after this discussion, I'm gonna find myself scraping and trying to find this book somewhere on my Kindle to read it again. But I hope you guys do read it. Let's talk about the 9th book in the list. I wanted to add this book to the list because it is different from all the other books, but also the story opened my mind to so many different things that I did not know. Of course, with the access to so much media around us, blogs, we know a lot about history that was unheard of, especially so about African American history. But this book, The Color Purple by Alice Walker, is a story about slavery around the time that slavery was still prevalent, and it's from the viewpoint of the protagonist being of African American descent. And I personally did not know so many things about history. I mean, I know about how bad things were when India was colonized, but we often do not find ourselves getting out of our comfort zone and trying to know about what happened in Africa and how it affected the slaves back in the USA. And also, one of the very prevalent theme in the books is how women, even in these oppressed sects, are more oppressed. So as to speak, they are the oppressed of the oppressed, which is in itself very disheartening to read, very sad. And yet I felt I learned so many different things. It changed my perspective of looking at history. It changed my viewpoint, and I could connect the dots to where some things came from. So highly informational, really nicely written a book. It's not fast paced, but it is dramatic in its own senses, and you would find yourself falling in love with the characters, trying to root for them. That is always a plus in the story that you are reading. You would be sad at some point, that such is life, such are every other book. So even then, I added this to the list because I feel when you read books like this, it makes you feel grateful, which is there, but it also helps you understand perspective of people from different cultures and people from different places in the world, people who have had such a hard history of coming so far. Let's end this discussion with a little quote. I think it pisses God off if you walk by the color purple in a field somewhere and don't notice it. I forgot to mention why they call it the color purple is because it is around the time that indigo farming was on the rise, and a lot of slaves were put to farming these fields. Farming these fields, as we know, are hard in itself, and of course the worst of the work fell to these people, and that is why it's called The Color Purple. From one African American author to another, let's move on to the 10th book in the list. This is a piece of essay, another non-fiction, and when I read this book, I was very enthused with energy, enthused with a lot of ideas, and as you might have guessed, I'm very attached to issues pertaining female rights and just feminist problems around the world. And there was a phase that when I read a lot of feminist literature, I still do. I haven't had a chance to read a lot of them lately, but I would like to. And the book that I'm talking about is We Should All Be Feminist by Chimamanda Adichie. This is a very small book, and I would not divulge a lot of information what this book is about, because you can guess from the title. It just is an essay about how the author had find her way through the world and what are the things that infuriate her, and she also adds a lot of anecdotes from her personal life and life of women around her. It is very empowering to read, and it boils your blood sometimes, because all of us has gone through something or the other like this in our lifetime, and I strongly advise men around me to read this, women around me to read this, just to open up your minds and be open to people of all gender, races, caste and creed, which is what we are trying to achieve with this agenda of equality, aren't we? So that's about it. I don't think so I need to say more about this, but I highly recommend it. I gave it a 5-star. So I am passing it along to you to read. I'm going to end this discussion with a quote, as has been the theme of this video. Some people ask why the word feminist? Why not just say you are a believer in human rights or something like that? Because that would be dishonest. Feminism is, of course, part of human rights in general. But to choose the use, the vague expression human rights is to deny the specific and particular problem of gender. It would be a way of pretending that it was not women who have, for centuries, been excluded. It would be a way of denying that the problem of gender targets women. I know we can get into a long discussion about these rights. Equal rights mean female rights, all of these things, but I adhere to the view that the author is trying to tell in these paragraphs. I hope it opens up your mind too, if it is not in that direction yet, and even if it is, I'm pretty sure it is going to leave you with something to think about. So please read this one. With that, we almost didn't realize we're almost at the end of the video, and I have 2 more books for you, so do not go away yet. Both of these books are by the same author. One is a piece of fiction, another is a piece of non-fiction, and yet both of them had a very important role to play in my life. Hence, I have added them to the list. I hope it encourages and motivates someone else's life too, to get better. And also, whenever you're feeling lost, you do not feel that it is the end of the world for you. The 11th book, so to say, is going to be Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. I know Murakami is a very popular author and he needs no name, and I'm probably going to be the 100th person to tell you to read one of his books, but Kafka on the Shore was a book that I read when I was just grieving, and I picked that one up, and it's such a beautiful story of feeling lost in this world, and you can have everything taken away from you, yet you can find something to love, you can find something to hold on to, and even though people leave us in their physical forms, it is their memories that are still with us, and that is what makes life so beautiful. That is the message of the book. It is very as is the case with Murakami's read, they have a bit of magical realism, they have a bit of everything, but personally, it's just like very, very beautiful to read at the end of the day. Story is about two characters, Kafka, Temura, who has run away from his home, and another one is about an aging person known as Nakata, and both of their lives are entirely different. We see parallels, the scene shifting from one person's life to another, and there's also a cat, a mysterious cat in the play. Kafka is just finding for so many answers in his life. Whether or not he finds them, we're going to find it at the end of the book, but even then he takes away so much more in the process, is what the book is about. This is by far my most favorite quote of all the time, and it happens to be in this book, so I'm not gonna leave this discussion without mentioning it. Memories warm you up from the inside, but they also tear you apart. This quote can mean different for different people in their lives. This quote can, you can relate to it, you cannot relate to it. In either case, I feel it's a very beautiful thing to write. With that, we are almost at the end of this video. The 12th book on the list is What I Talk When I Talk About Running by Haruki Murakami, again by the same author that I talked about just in the book before. And this book has just been so pivotal in my life. I feel I can make an entire video on it, which at some point I will, but it is the memoir of Murakami, where he talks about running being a way of his life. And add to that, he also was coming up with a writing career around the same time, and he believes that it is only running that he does in his life, but as a matter of fact, he became more disciplined and he enjoyed his own company a lot more when he started running alone, and that, which is like something that was required of him as a writer, to sit alone in silence for hours at an end and come up with something without being distracted. Also, he talks about just the never-ending spirit of setting yourself goals and flying through them and not giving up. So this is a book that changed my life, because when I read it in last January, after that I started running around June, and I feel like somewhat the setting steps for that exercise in itself was set when I read the book. So yeah, that's about it. I feel like if you have not read or come across this book, now is the time. This is your sign to do so, and if you've already, then again I'm telling you to finally pick this one up. Let's end this video with a very, very nice quote from the book, so as you leave something with a positive outlook from this video. All I do is keep on running in my own cozy homemade void, my own nostalgic silence, and this is a pretty wonderful thing, no matter what anybody else says. So to end this video, no matter what anyone else says, you do you. Just hold on to healthy habits, hold on to things that make you happy, hold on to books around you, and sooner or later you would achieve what you want to achieve. Thank you so much for tuning in today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me as much as I enjoyed making this video. And if you really like the video, I would highly appreciate if you can like it, if you can share it with your friends, and if you're feeling particularly generous, please consider subscribing to this channel. I come up with these videos almost every week, and I'm also open to more suggestions. So if you have anything to say about this video or future videos that you would like seeing, please add those suggestions in the comments below. I make it a point to read all the comments, and I'm just trying to improve on my content and everything, as I'm pretty new to this journey, so I'd highly appreciate your support there, and I hope I see you guys next time. Thank you so much. Bye bye.